Naman notes, Naman notes, Naman notes, Naman notes, Naman notes. Morning, everyone. Thank you, Reverend Jerry, for your kind introduction. Thank you to Southern District and OCBC for hosting our seminar today. Our thoughts as well go to all the victims of the fire. The Gomonshu of our Honganji is also very concerned, and we received notice recently that Honganji is going to send these little small home altar kits for people who have lost their homes, and I'll be delivering that to the families on behalf of the Gomonshu. So I'd like to go right into my message for today. So I'd like to begin to set the tone for this by showing a short music video that sets the stage for what I would like to say about orthodoxy and heterodoxy in Shin Buddhism. And this is a video by Yo-Yo Ma, the esteemed cellist, who is talking about a master class that he's going to teach. I stumbled on it because I like to watch music videos, and I just stumbled on this video, and I thought, oh, this really relates to our gathering today. So allow me to play this video by Yo-Yo Ma.
You probably know me, if you know me at all, as someone who does this.
There has come to us a young man aged 7 bearing the name Yo-Yo Ma.
I've been playing the cello for over 60 years, so I should be getting it right by now. However, is that what I'm trying to do? Am I trying to get it right, or am I trying to find something? This is not an ordinary masterclass. I really don't like to tell people things, so I hope you won't expect me to do that. But during our time together, we're going to talk about what creates magical moments. That magic is something living, and to me, that's the essence of what I try to do in music, transmitting something so it lives in somebody else. At one point, I had the audacity to think I could play a perfect concert. I was in the middle of a concert, and I realized everything's going perfectly well, and I was bored out of my mind. That was the moment that I made a fateful decision that I was actually going to devote my life to human expression versus human perfection. Music connects people. You're sharing something with others. You're almost like the scientist for the inner soul. The whole act of life is a balance of unbelievably intricate forces, of which music is a subset. I'm Yo-Yo Ma, and this is Masterclass.
So there's so much from this video that I thought really relates to Buddhism. Magical moments. What creates these magical moments that he talks about? The magic is something living. It's something living. Music, or we could add the Dharma, connects people. You're sharing something with others. You're almost like the scientist for the inner soul. The whole act of life is a balance of unbelievable, intricate forces of which music, and we could insert the Dharma, is a subset. This is the line that I really love. Transmitting something so that it lives in somebody else. Transmitting something so that it lives in somebody else. Isn't that what the Dharma is all about? Isn't that what Shakyamuni Buddha did in his 40 years of teaching? Transmitting something so that it lives in somebody else. Isn't that what Shinran Shonin did throughout his life? transmitting something so that it lives in somebody else. This is one of Shinran Shonin's poems. Those who, hearing Amida Buddha's name, rejoice in it with reverence and praise, receive its treasure of virtues. The great benefit acquired with one utterance is supreme. Shinran Shonin made Buddhism accessible to the everyday person through his poems. To receive the Nembutsu in one's heart and mind, to come to awaken to what in Shin Buddhism we call Shinjin, this was the magical moment for Shinran Shonin. This is what he transmitted so that it could live on in others. So the other part of this wonderful video by Yo-Yo Ma is where he says, more than perfection, he emphasizes expression. So I would wager to guess that he could play the same piece 100 times, but each time he plays it, he might express it differently, musically, each time, depending on his feeling and emotion at that time. So in focusing on expression instead of perfection, he transmits something that lives on in somebody else. He creates a magical moment for someone. So to me, our orthodoxy in Shin Buddhism, in Nishi Honganji, does the opposite. Does the opposite. The emphasis is on perfection, not expression. So let me share what I mean by this. So our orthodox Honganji looks at this rose, like the Jodo Shinshu teachings, and they say, this is a perfect rose. This is a perfect rose. The Jodo Shinshu teachings are pure, perfect. So our responsibility is to preserve, protect this perfect teaching, this perfect teaching. So in order to preserve, to keep the Jodo Shinshu teachings perfect, they put it in glass, or they put it in a frame, emphasizing the perfection side instead of the expression side. But just like if you stick a rose in a glass box, it will die because it needs fresh air. So a living Dharma needs new expression. And we cannot transmit something that is not living. As Yo-Yo Ma says, transmit something so that it lives in someone else. So in trying to maintain and preserve a pure and perfect Jodo Shinshu, to me, the orthodoxy fails to ask a fundamental question. Is it working today? Is it working? Is it living today? Are the Shin Buddhist teachings that we are trying to transmit, that we regard as perfect and pure, is it working? Is it resonating with modern people, with contemporary society? Is it creating a magical moment for anyone? So I think the decline of the Honganji, to me, is an indication that it isn't working in Japan, that it isn't resonating with people. If it did, the Honganji would be growing. This is a figure that I didn't come up with. It's something that a Honganji official told us, all of us ministers, some years ago. We have 10,000 temples in Japan, Honganji temples. But Honganji expects to lose 1/3 of those temples in the next 10 years. That's not losing 3,000 members, that's losing 3,000 temples. 3,000 temples they expect to just close. But our BCA, we're in the same kind of situation. We lost 28% of our membership in the last 10 years. Every temple has a BCA annual report. You can look at the figures yourself. If our message was resonating with people, we should be growing too. And of course, we can cite many various reasons for our decline of membership. We had the pandemic and this and that. People aren't interested in organized religion. But we have to ask ourselves the hard, challenging questions. Is it working? Is it resonating with our members and with newcomers? Are we creating magical moments for people? So 40 years ago, when I studied in Japan under a wonderful teacher, Professor Shigaragi, he was trying to say that it wasn't working. 40 years ago, he was saying this. He was trying to bring new life, new expression to Shin Buddhism and to the Honganji. But he was harshly criticized and even called heretical. But he was undaunted. And he was criticized for being critical of the Honganji, but Sensei himself, he was a Honganji minister. He had his own temple in Hiroshima. He wanted the Honganji to prosper. He wanted Shin Buddhism to grow. And that's why he was trying to address these challenges that he saw the way things were going. But he was kind of only seen as a critic. But everything he was saying 40 years ago is coming true now. The Honganji is in rapid decline. Buddhism is losing its relevancy with modern people in Japan. Funeral customs are changing, and economically, temples are losing income drastically. In Japan, temples are totally dependent on the income from funerals and memorial services. Things are changing. People aren't having funerals now and not observing the memorials. But over here, our temples, we're not totally dependent on funerals and memorial services. We have membership dues and we have fundraisers like Obon and whatnot, in addition to the donations from funerals and memorials. In his time, Shakyamuni Buddha, he was looked at as a heretic. He was teaching something very different from the religion, which was Hinduism, of his time. But he gave new expression to spirituality. He created magical moments for people, and his Sangha grew. And it's continued for 2,500 years because he transmitted something that lived on in somebody else. During Shinran Shonin's time, the orthodox Buddhism was Tendai Buddhism. The Shinran Shonin left Tendai Buddhism and joined Honen Shonin, who was looked at as unorthodox, heretical, from the orthodox Tendai Buddhism. Both Honen Shonin and Shinran Shonin gave Buddhism new expression, new interpretation. In their day, they were the heretics, the heterodoxy. But they were just trying to relate Buddhism to the people of their time. They were trying to relate what they felt was the real essence of Buddhism. So it's our challenge to give Shin Buddhism new expression, to relate it in a way that resonates with modern people. And as a minister, I have to challenge myself to give a Dharma message that transmits something that lives on in somebody else. Our sanghas can be places where newcomers and lifelong Buddhists can find magical moments. I'd like to share a conversation I had not too long ago with a new Las Vegas Sangha member and her magical moment. I met so as the bishop, I'm in charge of the Las Vegas Sangha. So it's really hard to be the bishop. I have to go to Las Vegas every 3 or 4 months. Everybody knows how much I love Las Vegas. So on the last visit I went, I noticed there's a new family, not Japanese American. It's a husband and wife, and they have 2 kids. And I'm talking to the wife. And she was, I asked, how'd you get started here and everything? And she was sharing with me that she and her husband tried every religion that you can imagine over the course of many years. All kinds of religion, various kinds of Christianity, and they tried everything, but nothing connected with them. Nothing really resonated with them. And so then her husband would say, well, we haven't tried Buddhism yet. Should we try Buddhism? Okay, let's try Buddhism. So he looked up on the internet. He found that the Las Vegas Sangha was 5 minutes from their house. Hey, there's one close by. They went. She told me on her first visit, even as she walked into the center there, even before the service started, she sensed that she had found her spiritual home. She sensed something, a warmth from the Sangha, even before the service, before the message. Then after the service, after the messages, even more so, they have found their spiritual home. Then she was telling me their daughter, maybe 9 years old or around there, 9 or 10 maybe. It was their daughter's birthday on one Sunday. She said, oh, it's your birthday today. We'll take you wherever you want to go. What do you want to do? You want to go to a movie? And the daughter said, well, isn't today Sunday? Yeah, today's Sunday. Isn't there service at the Sangha Center today? Yeah, there's service. Isn't there Dharma school at the Sangha Center? Yeah, there's Dharma school. That's what I want to do for my birthday. Isn't that amazing? I wouldn't pick that if it was my birthday, I won't go to Las Vegas or go golfing or something. This 9-year-old girl chooses to go to service and listen to the Dharma and go to Dharma school. She's had her magical moment. See? One of our newest ministers is Reverend Melissa Opal. She's serving at San Francisco, but she's shared in numerous talks her first visit to Spokane. She was raised going to evangelical Christian churches. She was quite involved. She was even training to become a leader. And then when that church found out that she was gay, they kicked her and her wife out. They were kicked out of the church. So then for several years, she was disenchanted with religion, and then they decided to check out Buddhism. So they went to the Spokane Buddhist temple. First thing is, in the pew in front of them is another gay couple. Oh my gosh, they really do accept LGBT community in Buddhism. Then, when the sutra chanting started, she really can't even put it into words, but something about the sutra chanting was a magical moment for her. She found herself sobbing, just touched so deeply emotionally. She was trying to hide it from her spouse and other, but she couldn't hold it back. That was her magical moment. So we can be a place where people find the Dharma through magical moments at our churches and temples, and maybe even online. They might encounter it in various ways. For some, it might be a Dharma message. For others, it might be meeting someone in the Sangha. For another, it might be meditation, or maybe the sutra chanting, or maybe for another, dancing at Obon. Or, on another, it might be a study class or a discussion class. So let me give you just a little bit background on how our orthodoxy kind of got established. In the early 1800s, there was a huge doctrinal dispute between two groups in the Honganji, and this was called the Sango Wakuran controversy. So one group asserted a very passive interpretation of Shin Buddhism. Amida saves us, we don't have to do anything, and if we did, that would be self-power. The other group was more assertive. Well, no, you have to do something. You have to listen to the Dharma, you have to seek the teachings, you have to say the Nembutsu. So these two groups were in conflict. It was a huge, huge doctrinal dispute. And a judge had to be brought in to settle the issue. Ultimately, the passive side won out, and that became the orthodox of our tradition today. And we even have a system of scholar priests called kangaku that they address any doctrinal issues or controversies in the Honganji and define what is correct or orthodox. Some years ago, I was asked to speak at a symposium in Japan, and it was just myself and a kangaku, Tokunaga sensei. So it was on meditation. And they had been hearing that we do meditation in the United States, and gee, isn't that self-power? And so I talked about how we do meditation. We're not trying to do it like a self-power practice. We do it as a way to prepare ourselves to listen to the Dharma, to receive the Dharma. And Tokunaga sensei says, oh, that's fine. He said that he thought that was there was nothing wrong with that. So then we had, after we each spoke, there was a little panel, and then the moderator was going to ask us questions, and the moderator said, the first question I want to ask is, how would you express Jodo Shinshu in just a few words, in one sentence or so? So I'm thinking to myself, obviously, he's going to ask Tokunaga sensei for his opinion first. So I'll say, well, I totally agree with Tokunaga sensei. I can't express it any better than that. I'm already thinking in my head what to say. Then the moderator says, Reverend Harada, can you go first? Oh my, you have no time to think. You have to just, something has to come out from you. So I think I said something like, well, I think Shin Buddhism is a teaching in which, through the light of the Dharma, we are shown our ego self and how to transcend it. Then the moderator asked Tokunaga sensei, Sensei, how would you express it? Tokunaga sensei said, I totally agree with Reverend Harada said. What a relief. But the kangaku are these scholar priests that make these doctrinal sort of decisions. So although we must find new expression, there's of course a limit as to how far we can go as far as teaching. For example, we don't teach that the Nembutsu will help you win in Las Vegas. People put their little frogs on their slot machines. You know, you don't put a Namwami Dabutsu scroll there. And don't pull the slot machine, Namman Dabutsu. The time you should say the Nembutsu is after you lost, and you go, oh, stupid me. Namman Dabutsu. And we don't teach that the Nembutsu will, but although it won't help you win a jackpot, it will give you spiritual wealth. Spiritual wealth. We don't teach that if you recite the Nembutsu, it will cure your cancer. But if you do, unfortunately, have to get cancer, the Nembutsu can be a source of tremendous comfort, spiritual strength, and enable one to even transcend life and death. So one of our orthodox issues is how we regard the Pure Land. So the orthodox standpoint is that we cannot know the Pure Land in this life. We only know the Pure Land when we die. To me, this might resonate with some people in the West, but in the West, I don't think this necessarily resonates, especially people who have left the Judeo-Christian tradition. So look at how Saichi expresses it. He says, I'm fortunate, indeed, not dead I go, just as I live, I go to the Pure Land. Namu Amida Butsu. I am poor and immensely happy at that. Amida's Pure Land I enjoy while here, Namu Amida Butsu. If the Shaba world is different from the Pure Land, I should have never heard the Dharma. See? Myself and this Shaba world and the Pure Land and Amida, all is one, Namu Amida Butsu. Saichi talks about hell. I am not to go to Jigoku. Jigoku is right here. We are living in Jigoku. Jigoku is no other place than this. So Saichi experiences hell in the here and now, and has a sense of the Pure Land in the here and now. I once had a wonderful conversation with a longtime OCBC member, Junji Sadashina, who is a Hiroshima atomic bomb survivor. And he was telling me, Sensei, I don't believe in hell in the afterlife. And the reason I don't believe in it is because I saw it with my own eyes that day in Hiroshima. He said, we can't even imagine the horrors that he saw, the suffering, the devastation. So Junji says, well, ministers say we can't know the Pure Land in this life, but if I can see hell with my own eyes, why can't I see the Pure Land? So he said that when he's having dinner with his wife, his son, and his granddaughters, that's the Pure Land to him. That's the Pure Land to him. And he's been in hell in more than just the atomic bomb. He lost his teenage son when he was in high school from a tragic car accident. A few years ago, he lost his wife. So I can't tell Junji, no, you cannot know the Pure Land in this life. See, he senses it. But we don't go around saying we're Buddhas or we're enlightened. That's the uniqueness of Shinran Shonin. So Saichi has this poem. I am a happy man indeed. I visit the Pure Land as often as I like. I'm there and I'm back. I'm there and I'm back. I'm there and I'm back. Namu Amida Butsu. So I love these poems by Saichi. I think it shows us a tremendous spiritual depth of the Nembutsu. But from a strict Orthodox standpoint, I think you'd have to say this is beyond the orthodoxy. This is what I like to close with, this image of a rainbow, So if we look at this rainbow as representing a broad spectrum of interpretation of Shin Buddhism, then our orthodox just looks at one section, like the middle part of the rainbow. This is Jodo Shinshu. But so anything to the left or anything to the right, that's not Jodo Shinshu. But to me, why not have a little broader view? And we can let people decide for themselves which interpretation relates to them, resonates with them, and we can all still share this path of the Nembutsu together. Some might relate to a passive approach, some might relate to a more active approach to their life. And that is our challenge for the future. Do we just maintain the orthodox despite our present state of decline, or do we challenge ourselves to give Shin Buddhism in the West new expression, new interpretation, so that we can create magical moments for newcomers and existing members, so that the Nembutsu resonates and comes alive for everyone. Naman Nobutsu, Naman Nobutsu, Naman Nobutsu, Naman Nobutsu. I'd like to stop here and allow Kuhara Sensei to set up for his presentation.
Thank you, Reverend Harada. While Reverend Kuwahara is setting up, I'd just like to let you know a little bit about him if you don't already. Kuwahara Sensei is the head of Jodo Shinshu International Office, and I feel kind of bad because when he first came to BC, I called him a spy. So he still used that in his introduction because he still works for Honganji. But he is also
I'm a spy.
the resident minister of the Berkeley Buddhist Temple. And he teaches at IBS and a lot of our Center for Buddhist Education activities. Although he doesn't have the little doctor next to his name, he has actually finished all the PhD. He's in the older program, Ryukoku. So according to the way we do it in the West, he would be PhD. But in Japan, he doesn't get the PhD until he retires. So he's very educated as far as our Honganji traditions and doctrine go. So we've used him quite a bit, and his presentations are always very enjoyable. So I think you'll have a very good time listening to Reverend Kuwahara. So Kuwahara-sensei, onegaishimasu.
Hi, Jerry Sensei, thank you very much for your too nice introduction of myself. And then I think, I'm experiencing a Saha world right now, which means I have a technical issue. But while he's working on some technical thing, so today maybe some of you noticed some publications at the entrance. I am working for the organization Jodo Shinshu International Office, in short JSIO, which is like a Honganji's satellite office to spread Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion, Shinran Shonin's teaching to more people in the world. So our office working with BCA and then Hawaii Kyodan, and then Jodo Shinshu organization in Canada, South America, Europe, of course, Honganji. And then as a part of our activity, we publish many books and journal, like a quarterly journal. So when you have a chance, I put some samples outside of the Hondo. And so please take a look. And then I have some copies of quarterly journals. And then please take copies so that I can, I don't have to carry heavy, books back to Berkeley. I need your support. And then, so of course, if you have any questions, please let me know. So, first of all, I'd like to begin with the Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Again, thank you everyone for attending today's session. It's a Saturday morning. I know many people want to be relaxed, but many of you come here to listen to the Dharma, deepen your appreciation of the teaching. And I really, really appreciate your attendance here today, and then support of OCBC and then Southern District, and then so many people have worked, and then of course CBE have worked so hard to hold this precious Dharma gathering. So I'm showing people sitting back there, can you read? You can just look back, and then there is another monitor up there. Or you can, we still have a open pews in the front. You can come to the front. Anyway, so I have a kind of two items in this half-hour presentation, my time. So the first item I'd like to cover is kind of my role or significance of doctrine, which is a kind of line to distinguish orthodox or heterodox. Why this doctrine is important, and then as a part of one kind of discussion, conversation, I'd like to talk a little bit about relationship between Shinjin and then Nembutsu recitation. But I think this is a part of Dharma activity, and then attending, listening to speakers. I'm sure you will deepen, expand your appreciation, understanding of the Dharma. And so that's why I'd like to read this too. So if you can, please join me in reading this passage. How to listen to a Dharma message. I listen as if I'm listening for the first time. I listen as if the message is for myself alone. I listen as if this is the last chance to listen to the Dharma. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. So, when CBE decided to have this seminar with a title, like a heterodoxy or heresy, and then last summer, August, we had a similar, we have a summer Pacific seminar. And then last summer, we covered like a Jodo Shinshu orthodoxy. And then talking to some members, some people showed a kind of negative reaction to the title topic, like orthodoxy and heterodoxy, heresy kind of thing. And then I was wondering why people don't like, especially heresy and heterodoxy. So that's why I think it's important to talk about why heterodoxy, orthodoxy, and then doctrine is important. So maybe first half of my presentation, let me introduce some of my understanding idea of the important significance of Jodo Shinshu doctrine. So now you are looking at the two pictures of my boys, my sons. I have 3 boys. My wife is only girl at my home. Me and the 3 boys. She needs to take care of 4 boys. And then this is second son, 8. Now this is his real name. Yeah, EIGHT. And his passport, birth certificate. Yeah, this name is on those documents. And then now he's 16 years old. And then Hiroto is the youngest son. He's now 12 years old. You can see what they're doing. Yeah. So this is a Jodo Shinshu Center parking lot. So now, 8 is age 16. So he's interested in driving a car. So legally speaking, California, United States, he can get the permit and get a driver's license, right? But Hiroto he's 12 years old. So under the current United States legal system, Eito can drive a car, can get the driver's license, but the Hiroto no good, right? And then I'm from Japan. And how about the Japan? So people age 16, it is not allowed to get the driver's license. In Japan, age 18 is the year we can get the driver's license, right? So if, Eito goes to Japan, even if he gets a driver's license here, go to Japan, he's not legally allowed to drive a car. Yeah. So I know because of the new administration, border is a kind of political, big social issue right now. But let me talk about borderline this way, okay? So now I'm showing the map, image of the North America. And then you see different names of different countries. And then how do we kind of divide or differentiate countries or nations? Borderlines, right? And then why do we have border lines? Because of these border lines, divide the country like a legal system, right? I don't know Canada how young they can start driving, but because of this border line, each country has a kind of different age of kind of legally driving a car, and then vote, election system, tax system, drinking alcohol, and then marriage. So many things in our everyday life is different from country to country. With this, borderline is one kind of clear line to differentiate all those, social kind of legal systems. Right? So then let me, change a little bit, to look at the so-called religion. So speaking of religion, there are many different religious teachings: Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, Shintoism, Buddhism, right? And then even then now we looking at when we look at the Buddhism, right? Theravada Buddhist tradition, Tibetan Buddhist tradition, then Mahayana Buddhist tradition, right? So there are many different Buddhist schools within the Buddhism. And then now, when we look at the Mahayana Buddhism, so Buddhism is the path, teaching for each of you to become a Buddha, to become an enlightened one, right? And then to do so, can we attain Buddhahood? Can we become a Buddha in this world? Or can we attain Buddhahood? We become a Buddha in Buddha's land, especially our tradition, Amida Buddha's Pure Land, right? So within Mahayana Buddhism, where we attain a Buddhahood, there are kind of two different schools, traditions. And then when we look at the Buddhist traditions, teachings, schools that teach attaining Buddhahood, becoming a Buddha in Buddha's land, like a Jodo Shinshu, Jodoshu, there are some other different schools within the teaching tradition that teaches to attain to become a Buddha, right? So here again, we see lines, right? So we, as a Buddhist, I hope, I believe, we don't believe in God because we are not a Christian, And then we don't practice Ramadan because we are not, Islam, Muslims, right? So to my understanding, like a border or those, religious, structure, so those lines works to differentiate itself from other teaching or other country, other legal cultural system, right? So those lines are very important. So to me, doctrine or teaching is something like that, right? Because of the doctrine of Jodo Shinshu teaching, we are kind of different from Jodoshu school. We are different from other Theravada Buddhist school. We are different from Christianity or Shintoism, right? So those lines, is working as a kind of differentiate from us, which is teaching and doctrine. And then, as we look at the country border lines, inside the line, some things, right, valid or legitimate, right, like a driving, legal. And then outside the line, although like here in the United States, we can drive age 16, but outside of this line, we go to Japan, the other countries, driving at age 16 is not legitimate, valid, right? So this is how those line works, function to differentiate things, right? And then let me bring this idea, orthodoxy, and then heterodoxy or heresy, right? So within this line or within this teaching or doctrine, some interpretations or understanding make sense or legitimate. But once we go outside of this line or doctrine, then this understanding, interpretation no longer valid or legitimate. And then those interpretations or different understanding is so-called heresy or heterodoxy. Is it more like a religious or theology field, right? But if you don't like this expression, maybe just say false interpretation or different interpretation. Or we could even say misunderstanding of the teaching, right? And then when we look at the history of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, I know some of you have read the Corrected Works of Shinran, CWS. And then in the Corrected Works of Shinran, we see the letters of Shinran Shonin. During Shinran Shonin's time, he composed a letter and then sent to his followers, disciples. And then some letters, Shinran Shonin addressed the issue of members, followers who understood the teaching of Amida Buddha, Jodo Shinshu teaching. And then after Shinran Shonin passed away, this is one of the famous, Jodo Shinshu book is Tannisho in Japanese. English title is A Record in Lament of Divergences. And this Tannisho, roughly speaking, the Yuyan, who composed this book, follower of Shinran Shonin, talks about the 18 kind of wrong, false interpretation, understanding of Jodo Shinshu teaching. Right? And then during Renya Shonin's time, by that time, Jodo Shinshu became the nationwide, the largest Buddhist organization. So that's why, Honganji got a lot of members, right? So more people, more different interpretation, different understanding. So that's why Renya Shonin had a really hard time to kind of provide a standardized teaching, because people talk about the Jodo Shinshu teaching kind of in different ways. Right? And then in the Edo period, there is a kind of big movement of developing Jodo Shinshu doctrine teaching. Right? So that's why Harada Sensei mentioned the Sango Wakura. Not only Sango Wakura, there are many different doctrinal disputes to kind of figure out what is the correct interpretation, what is the incorrect interpretation. Right? So when we look at the history of Jodo Shinshu, always kind of dealing with false interpretation or wrong interpretation. Right? And then, how about me? I studied the Jodo Shinshu Buddhism at the Ryukoku University. And then I came to IBS to study Buddhism, especially in comparison with Christianity. But I have a lot of doctrinal information or teachings in my here. But always it's very important to look at myself. Is my understanding, interpretation of Amida Buddha correct? Is my understanding of Nembutsu recitation correct? Because this teaching, Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, there are many different, a lot of items. Shinjin, recitation Nembutsu, and then Amida Buddha, Pyoran, right? So always it's nice to reflect on my understanding, interpretation. Because look at the history. There are so many smart, brilliant, Jodo Shinshu scholars, followers. But sometimes people, go a wrong kind of direction of understanding, interpretation of teaching. So it's very important to constantly look into myself using the doctrine or teaching to check myself. So when we look at ourselves, again, teaching doctrine is very, very important. Right? It's a kind of standard to look at myself. So in the Jodo Shinshu tradition, we say there is I will introduce a couple 4 Chinese character set phrase. In our tradition, there are many 4 Chinese character set phrase. And then Haja Kensho, there is a word Haja Kensho. It means the first Chinese character means destroy, or in this context, more like a refute. The second Chinese character is the wrong or false interpretation, understanding. The third Chinese character means reveal. The last one is the correct interpretation, correct understanding. So sometimes the importance, the role of Jodo Shinshu teaching doctrine is Haja Kensho, refuting to refute the wrong interpretation and then reveal the correct understanding, interpretation. And then how to use this teaching, doctrine, especially with the understanding of this Haja Kensho. And then who's, this here, false or wrong interpretation, whose false understanding talking about? Revealing the correct teaching for who? If we look at the chapter 12 of Tannisho, a record of divergences, there is a kind of discussion topic about this issue. So as we study Buddhism, and then doctrinally we can expand our knowledge. And then what will happen? Some people go out and then kind of criticize, refuse other people's interpretation, and then, your understanding is wrong, right? But no, the teaching, the importance of doctrine in the Jodo Shinshu tradition is, again, so to look at myself, not refuting, criticizing other people, always kind of to look into ourselves. So doctrine in Japanese kyogaku is not a tool, weapon to defeat other people. It's a kind of mirror to look at myself, which is kind of second half. So this is a kind of importance of Jodo Shinshu, doctrine or teaching in the Jodo Shinshu tradition, especially when we talk about the heresy and the orthodoxy kind of thing, right? So because of that, based on that, many scholars, Jodo Shinshu followers, seriously, carefully developed Jodo Shinshu teaching, right? To figure out what is the correct understanding, right? Like three treasures, how is it to be born into human life? Now we're living it. Difficult is it to hear the teaching, the breath. Now we hear it. This is really precious for each of us to encounter the Buddha Dharma. Even when we encounter the Buddha Dharma, if we understand, take this teaching wrong way, different way, it's a kind of big loss. So that's why it's very important to have a good understanding, correct understanding. Right? So that's why in our tradition, there are huge kind of development of Jodo Shinshu teaching doctrine. So that's why, like a Shinjin, disquisitions, Shinjin, or maybe practice, and then practice Shinjin, so many different categories of those discussions. Yeah. So today, Miyaji Sensei, I miss. I think I can watch the other two, Mutsumi Sensei and Takashi Sensei's talk. But today, I think Miyaji Sensei is talking about should we, clearly recognize the moment of attaining Shinjin? This is one big kind of discussion, doctrinal discussion in Jodo Shinshu. Where, again, so Buddhism is the path for each of us to become a Buddha. And then when and where, right? Especially where, when. So in this world, we become a Buddha within this lifetime, in this Saha world. Or we become a Buddha after completing this life, attaining birth in the Pure Land. And that's when, or that's where we become Buddha, right? This is another kind of discussion under the Tokuyakuron in Japanese, like a benefit. And then my kind of topic is, because of Shinjin, do we recite the Nembutsu? Or do we attain Shinjin as we recite the Nembutsu? Kind of relationship between Shinjin and the Nembutsu discussion. Yeah. So now I'm kind of, shifting to the second point of my talk today. I know it's already 10:30, so I need to hurry up. This is kind of my bad habit. I always bring more than the time I have. Anyway, we have a lunchtime, so. To this question, let me use this short poem, a phrase composed by Senmyo Kagai Sensei. We say, it's hot, only after we bite into a chili pepper. In Japanese, o kara to iu wa tonari tougarashi. So in the Jodo Shinshu tradition, and then Shinran Shonin's interpretation understanding. So I have one quote here, knowing that thinking and voicing have the same meaning. No voicing exists separate from thinking, and no thinking separate from voicing. Right? So here, thinking is more like a thinking of Buddha, which is Shinjin, part of Shinjin. And then voicing is our recitation of Namo Amida Butsu. So this mind act and then verbal act, this is inseparable. So this is one very basic, interpretation stance of Jodo Shinshu teaching. And then based on that, and then this is the most important, I use the word like a tenet. So this is the most important Jodo Shinshu teaching. So what is the Jodo Shinshu teaching? So we can answer with these 8 Chinese characters. Although Shinran Shonin's Kyogyo Shinshu is very thick, but we could summarize Jodo Shinshu teaching, just 8 Chinese characters. Shinjin Shoin, Shomyo Ho. The first 4 means Shinjin as the decisive course. And then second half is reciting the name Namo Amida Butsu, is to repay the indebtedness, our indebtedness. What does it mean? This is more kind of more detailed interpretation. So Shinjin, what is Shinjin? Of course, we do need another big session to talk about what the Shinjin is. But Shinjin, one way is kind of to entrust, sincerely or humbly entrust ourselves to Amida Buddha's working, compassion and wisdom. Or maybe appreciation of Amida Buddha's guidance directed to each of us. And then showing, again, so Buddhism is, and of course, Jodo Shinshu too, is the path, way for each of you to become a Buddha, enlightened one. And then Shinjin is a decisive course for attainment, for our attainment. And the second half, recitation, and then to repay the, what we have received. And then Shinjin and then Nembutsu, which comes first? And then this is one discussion. So then let me use this back again. So o kara to yu wa tonari togarashi. So nobody says, oh, it's hot before people bite, chili pepper, right? Once you bite it, and then as a reaction, we say, we utter words. So in the Jodo Shinshu tradition, the Nembutsu in the Jodo Shinshu tradition is followed by, Shinjin is followed by the recitation, right? So that, which means Shinjin should come first. And then as a sort of reaction, we say Namo Amida Butsu. And then not only a recitation, when we come to the temple and then in the presence of Amida Buddha statue, we put our hands together and then we make a bow, showing our respect, reverence with our body. And sometimes we think of Buddha or Buddha Dharma within our heart, mind act, right? So all those are actions followed by Shinjin. And then this is a kind of one area of the Sango Wakuran, which Harada Sensei mentioned. So this kind of relationship, Shinjin, and then kind of manifestation of our act, how those two kind of necessity of the Shinjin and then manifestation, that is the kind of big discussion point of Sango Wakuran. Another kind of more like a secular example is, I believe many of you said, I love you from the heart of your heart. And then, but our words of I love you is a kind of manifestation of our, love within ourselves, right? Our deep love to somebody kind of arise, kind of took a form, as a word, I love you. And how about tears? When we really get, moved, tears comes out from our eyes, right? That is also manifestation of our moved heart, right? So Nembutsu, Namandabutsu in the Jodo Shinshu tradition is a sort of natural or spontaneous, manifestation of something within ourselves, which we call Shinjin. So that's why the Nembutsu in the Jodo Shinshu tradition is kind of after Shinjin, attainment of Shinjin. So that's why in our tradition, we call Shinzen Shogo. Shinjin, our appreciation comes before, and then our recitation comes after. So this is the one basic understanding in the relationship between Shinjin and the Nembutsu recitation. Then if I say so, I'm sure some people will raise this question. Okay, Sensei, then how about nobody has Shinjin when we are born, right? And then as we listen to the Dharma, at some point we could attain Shinjin. But how about, Nembutsu recitation before we attain Shinjin? Is that meaningless? So this is a kind of issue like a so-called empty Nembutsu. So this guy became age 50 just 2 weeks ago. January 10th is my, ありがとうございます, thank you, my birthday, and then I became 50 years old, half century. I really appreciate all people's support and patience. ありがとうございます. ありがとうございます. And then, ありがとうございます. And then, ありがとうございます. 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 And then, 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 ありがとうございます. 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 ありがとうござ But each of you, since you are born up until today, have received many courses and conditions. You've experienced many things, right? And then all those you've received made who you are now, who I am now, right? So then I was born at the temple family, raised at the temple. And then my father was a Jodo Shinshu priest. I was exposed to Nembutsu, the voice of Nembutsu. Of course, as a son of a Buddhist priest, I attended the service without knowing anything. I was just thinking Namandabutsu, Namandabutsu, right? Of course, I had a time period when I recited Nembutsu without knowing anything, right? But again, now I have a deep appreciation, gratitude for Buddha Dharma, Amida Buddha's guidance. But my appreciation, understanding, gratitude doesn't come all of a sudden, right? My appreciation and the gratitude kind of totally based upon all experiences, many causes and conditions, including my empty Nembutsu before I appreciate Amida Buddha's teaching. So in Buddhism, we talk about, I know interdependence is more popular words, but I like this expression, dependent origination. This is a kind of Buddhist ontology. This is how Buddhism see things exist, things appear, happen, right? And then in Chinese, we say like etakisho. Etakisho means the first Chinese kind of depending, others, and then things are born or things happen. So that's why our attainment of Shinjin, our deep appreciation, gratitude to Amida Buddha's guidance is directly or indirectly dependent on innumerable causes and conditions, including a Nembutsu recitation before attaining Shinjin. So if we look at our past, maybe some of you have attained Shinjin, but maybe our attaining Shinjin is kind of depend on our past kind of so-called empty Nembutsu. But if we look at our Nembutsu, our life, or this kind of ontological system, can we say it's a meaningless Nembutsu or not? Anyway, ごめんなさい. I know it's I talked too long. So this is I think again it's very important to learn, study teaching and the doctrine, and then always look into ourselves. And then that's how I want each of us to deepen our appreciation, gratitude, Buddha Dharma, so that we can live spiritually fulfilled life. ありがとうございました. So now I'd like to conclude my message with a question. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Jerry sensei.